Barbara, hi. Thank you
Hi.
so much for being here with us, talking about Elvis. As I said earlier to you, uh, I am from a generation that never grew up with Elvis. I became a fan when I was just 7 years old in 1987. So I didn't experience Elvis, the real Elvis. For me, he's someone at the books, in the books, and in records. But you experienced that. So I want to, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us your stories and your times that you uh, could enjoy the world where Elvis lived in.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much. Actually, I found your name, like I said to you before, in this book. You know, uh, this is a book about Elvis concerts in Memphis in 1961. And in this book, there is a reproduction of the Commercial Appeal newspaper, and it mentions your name. And I thought, how great if I could contact her and she could share with us uh, how she became a fan and how did she end up seeing such important concert like that one. That's how I found you on Facebook, and you kindly answer my message.
Um, I wondered how you had come across that. Um, I remember sitting next to that reporter very well.
Yes, you're going to share all this story with us. Uh, First of all, I want to start this conversation by asking you, uh, tell me what was the first song, the first Elvis song you remember hearing? Or how did you become a fan, became aware of him?
Oh, I do not remember the first song. I grew up at a time early on when there was no television, and my father died when I was three, so it was just my mother, my sister, and I. And my mother always had the radio on. She was always dancing around the kitchen. And it was a time when the radio stations played all music. And it had country, it had some rhythm and blues, and it had Elvis. And since Elvis was from Memphis, he went to high school in Memphis. He started his performing in Memphis, and that made the radio a good place to hear him. So I heard all of his songs and danced with my mother to all of his songs. And I really don't remember which was first. I was very young, and I kind of grew up with Elvis.
How Elvis was perceived by your parents? I ask that because Elvis was also a controversial figure. He was kind of
Mhm.
rebellious, seen sometimes as a bad influence on young people. But by 1961, he was already out of the army and his image kind of changed a bit. How was he still seen as a bad influence to young people at the time?
Not in Memphis. No, not in Memphis. In fact, I think he wasn't even a bad influence outside of Memphis. I think because of the physical way that he performed, it was something that was not seen before, and it appealed more to young people. I think it was the press, the media, who reported on his performances and said they were outlandish and they were not even fit for anyone to see. And my mother just laughed at that because she loved it, and all of the young kids loved it. So if he had a bad reputation, it's because of the press who reported, especially after his early television shows. You know, they said they were only going to show him from the waist up, but they gave in because they recognized he was doing something totally different from anyone else.
We talked earlier a bit about that, and you told some great stories about Elvis renting the movie theaters to young people, to the kids in Grayson.
Mhm,
Can you please
mhm.
share a bit of that stories with us?
Oh, sure. It actually was a little bit later because I was old enough to go. He They would put an ad in the paper, a small ad, maybe 1 inch, and it would give the date and the time. And the Memphian Theater was the theater he would rent out, and he would rent it out. If you showed up at midnight, you could go in and see the movie. And I went with my sister once, um, and never saw Elvis, but I saw a movie, and I don't even remember what the movie was. But it was just the fact that I knew I was in the theater with Elvis that was enough for me. He also would rent the the fairgrounds, we called it, but it was the amusement park where they held the fair each year. And he would have the same ad in the paper. We would go and walk in the front gate, and we could ride any ride for free. He'd kept everything going. And in fact, that was where I saw Elvis. He was able to go in his car. He didn't drive it. He sat in the back seat, and he had the doors open, and he was just there with all his friends, watching all the kids ride the rides. Um, I was able to get his autograph, but I couldn't approach the car myself. I asked for it, and one of his friends went and got it and brought it back to me.
So he was kind of he was not among the kids. He was just in his car, and he did that.
That's
He
right.
did that just for the pleasure of uh, make people happy.
Yes, he did. And I have always heard that he was not a good sleeper anyway. So it gave him a time where he could get out and just watch people having fun, especially kids, um, mostly teenagers. But it was a lot of fun. My mother wouldn't let me go very often. I just went to the theater once and the amusement park once, and then of course he wasn't in town all the time. He but he was by then a pretty important entertainer. Many people called him the greatest entertainer in the world and the most popular entertainer in the world. And there was no one in Memphis who was going to dispute that.
Yeah, and I agree with them. For me, he is the greatest entertainer that ever lived. This memory of the fairgrounds and the movie theaters,
Mhm.
it was perhaps in the late '60s or middle '60s.
Mm, Probably early 60s. Early 60s, because I have to kind of remember where we lived at the time, and I think we lived once they built the Coliseum. It was right next to the fairgrounds, and I just lived about 3 blocks from the Coliseum, and we could always hear when there was something going on at the fairgrounds or the Coliseum. So that had to have been, that was before 65, I know.
I think it's great this kind of that you can share this kind of memories with us, with the fans. I mean, because we know so much about the Elvis, the singer, Elvis, the actor, but his the human being. these stories about him helping people, making people enjoy life in some way. These are very important for us, for everybody to understand Elvis as a human being, because he's lost on this myth that became his life and his fame made of him. So it's very important to hear these stories and all. And I want to ask you, because since I found your name in the book, about the concert that is one of the pivotal moments of Elvis, because it wasn't. I think it was his three last concerts in 1961. Two were in Memphis, then he did another one in Hawaii at the time, and you were there, and I believe it was the matinee performance that you went. Please tell us about your recollections of that day. How did you become aware of the concert, and what do you remember of that moment?
Well, by that time in 1961, my uncle, who was 12 years younger than my mother, had gotten married to a girl named Charlotte. And she was just mad about Elvis. She loved him. And she wanted to go see him in 1961. But my uncle didn't want to go with her. So, as it happens, it was right around my birthday. So he suggested that I um, go with her so that he wouldn't have to go. So I was ecstatic. I thought, yay. So I went with my Aunt Charlotte, and I don't remember where. Um, I had actually thought it was the auditorium, but that was the later one. But we sat, the auditorium has a U shape with the stage in the front, and we were straight back in the balcony, right in front of where he was performing. And it was so much fun. Um, I just can't even tell you how much fun it was. She sat on my left and the reporter was on my right. So they didn't talk, but they both tried to talk to me, and I would just say, "Leave me alone, let me just listen." So,
Could you listen to anything? Because they always say that the people screamed so much at his concerts that sometimes he and the band couldn't be heard. Did you heard him very well,
oh,
or what was like?
I heard him very well. The matinee performance was smaller, and although it seemed full to me, and I didn't even remember that it was the matinee that we went to, but no, I could hear everything. And the reason that the reporter remembered me was because when he started singing the song, "It's Now or Never," um, I just grabbed my heart and fell back in the chair. And he called it a swoon, but it was my mother's favorite song, and what I was thinking was, oh, if only she could hear him do this. Um, because, one thing he had a real talent for is he always sounded good. And the fact that he was pushed to do a matinee and an evening performance, I don't think there's anyone who has ever been pushed to perform as much as him. And he didn't seem to strain. He just did it. And he always sounded good and he looked good too. Uh,
Do you remember some of the songs? You said "It's Now or Never." Do you remember other songs that kind of clicked with you?
Well, I think it's hard to remember which ones because he didn't always play the same ones. But I'm sure he did Hound Dog, and I'm pretty sure he did Love Me Tender was probably there. And I'm surprised I didn't swoon over that one.
But you did swan for It's Now or Never, so
I
it's good enough.
I did.
It's actually because the reporter wrote that you swoon that I could contact you, and because of that little misinterpretation of his, we can hear your wonderful memories.
Yes.
I had the list of the concerts of the set list here with me, and Hound Dog is there, and is the last song that he performed that night that you remember. And in the book, it says that it was the most pandemonium moment. Like everybody started to scream and dance. And do you remember if it was like that when he started singing Hound Dog?
I'm sure it was because I do remember my aunt grabbing me and she was just shaking me in just glee. She was so happy. Um, and I think we were standing by then. So,
Uh, did he dance a lot? Did he move a lot? Did that
yes,
make an impression on you?
yes, he moved a lot. He didn't do a lot of the, um, in his later shows, I I actually think of it as when he started wearing his white outfit. He didn't do those moves, um, but he did a lot of swiveling, and he knew how to get the audience to react. He could just stop and look at you, and that would cause the screams. Um, he knew how to perform to his best advantage.
Do you remember the outfit he was wearing, or did you took
Uh,
pictures of the concert?
no, this was I was 13 years old, so I just don't even remember any. I didn't know to do those things. Um, I didn't know to buy souvenirs. I didn't know anything. But it seems like he had like a cream colored pants and a darker shirt. He might have even started out in a sport coat. Um, but if he did, he took it off at some point. Um,
If someone like myself asks you, what is the photograph in your mind? What is the memory, the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about that concert? What it is?
um, hmm, just the fun of watching him, and he seemed to be having fun. So we were having fun together, and I wasn't even aware of all of the other people. It's like we had a connection. So,
Those concerts were the last ones he did until he came back in 1968, 1969. Um, he started to do a lot of movies in Hollywood at that time, in the 60s. Did you
mhm.
kept following his career, or is kind of did you push it aside? How it was those movie years for you?
I went to most of his movies, and um, up until up until this next concert that I went to, I watched his movies. I had gotten into my teenage years, and I had other things to do. But when he had that television, I think they called it a comeback performance in 60s something. And it was because um, the English invasion, and what people had learned from Elvis is that you could go out to your garage, learn to play the guitar, and you could become a star too. So, first there were lots of single acts, excuse me, and then there were all of the bands that came. And the competition was really great. And Elvis was off making movies and he wasn't performing. So the outlet for kids to go and actually see a live performance wasn't there with Elvis anymore. So it's like he lost touch with his young audience, and there were a lot of people who kept going to the concerts, um, or the movies, but it wasn't until that TV where he was there in the black leather that I reconnected with him because you know the sex appeal, the songs, he sounded as good, and you could see him there with his small band, the way they were laughing and the way they were close, and he was sharing something with us again that he didn't share in the movies. So that was a point where I was interested again.
That's great. You know,
Um,
that's it just reinforces the what we read about it in the books of the importance of this 68 comeback special that went on television, because it brought him back, really brought him back. He started to be relevant again in music and to young people and
mhm,
to the music field. So that's great to hear from
mhm.
someone who watched it. You remember watching it on television when it first aired? Yeah,
Oh
the
yeah,
the
oh yeah.
reaction of everybody was uh, like he resurrected, right? Like he was dead for a while.
Yes, and it wasn't just me because I actually um, I, I was in college then, and we didn't. The rooms in college, you had your bed and your sink, and then you had a large area where people could gather around a television, and that's what we did. Um, there were probably 60 girls in my dorm around that television set watching that concert, and it was important to everybody there. They if they had never seen him before, they were saying, "Wow."
Yeah, well, that's a great memory, great memory. Uh, he's like we were talking about his return, and he soon started to do live appearances again. Yep, start his mini tour in the 70s. First, he went to Las Vegas in 69, and then he went to tour again in the 70s. And he went back to Memphis a couple of times. He went back to Memphis in 74, 75, and then the last time in 76. Did you went to any of those
Mhm.
concerts?
I went to the one in '74,
The one that became the
and that
album?
I don't know. I did not realize they were recording, and from what I saw of the album later, he he was in different outfits. So I think they recorded different things, and made the album off of several of them. But in '74, um, his performing was still good, but it was different.
It was with How So?
Um, oh gosh, it's hard to explain, but he did not seem as joyful in his performance. He sounded just as good as ever, and he still looked good. Something that you wouldn't say even a couple of years later.
Yes.
But he still looked very good. I think he was in one of the white outfits by then,
Hmm.
and um, his performing was just different. He was highly refined. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's kind of like the raw energy was missing.
Yes.
Perhaps because when he was young, everything was fresh and new, and by that time he was already a seasoned singer and performer. He did that so many times. Uh, by 74, he was already 4 years uh, touring the United States. So probably
Hmm.
he didn't felt like that energy again. But you did like the concert.
Yes, yes, I did. And, that was a concert, though. Nobody wanted to go with me. And I went by myself. And the reason I wanted to go was because I knew that I was getting ready to leave Memphis. I was moving to Los Angeles for a job there. And I just felt like it would be my last chance to ever get to go and experience one of his concerts. So I went, and I do remember very well. I walked from my house so that I wouldn't have any traffic to have to worry with going home after the concert. So my walk home, I just kept hearing his songs. His voice was really just as good as ever. It was just the performance that was different. And I knew when I walked home that night, um, that it was kind of the end of a time for me because now I was going to have to really become an adult in an adult world. And well, that was kind of my goodbye.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. Well, it was a nice send off, a nice way,
Mm-hmm.
because that those concerts that he made in '74, if I do remember correctly, it was three or four. Uh, Three of them are out were released on CDs, and one of them was released as an album when he was alive, and
Mm.
they are regarded as some of the best concerts recorded of him in the 70s. So you witnessed something very special too when you saw him for the last time in one of those
Mm-hmm.
concerts. Very nice, very nice. It's
Thank
something that I wish I could have experienced. Did you by any chance kept any souvenirs of the '74 concert, like concert tickets or pictures, anything?
Oh, I don't recall. By the time I left Memphis, the only mementos that I took were in a small box like this. And, I left everything behind when I left, and everything was in my car that I owned. And that's all I had. And I had a scrapbook that I kept of Elvis, but I don't think I still have that. It what it was they had all the magazines, um, and I started getting these magazines early as a child. Um, Photo Play is the only one I can remember the name of, and they'd have pictures and they of the stars and everything that had to do with Elvis. I used to cut out and put in the scrapbook. And the last time I saw the scrapbook, the scotch tape wasn't holding the pictures down anymore. The binding had come off, and I tried to keep it, and I may have it somewhere, but if I do, it's because I shoved it underneath the car seats in the floorboard when I moved. And that's where I kept a lot of things when I moved. So uh, since then, I've moved so many times, I don't even know what I have left. Um, but when I have time, I will look for.
You mentioned that you moved soon after '74, I
Mm-hmm.
think to LA, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a couple of years later, in '77, he died
Yes.
in a very young age, in an unexpected way. How did you receive the news?
I was at work, I remember, and we had an office in Century City, and my boss was a commodities trader, and he had gone to Ghana, and he was out of town. So I was basically the only one in the office and didn't have any work to do. So I just listened to the radio and heard the announcement on the radio. And all what I thought of at the time, my boss was also from Memphis. He was the brother of my best friend. And I thought, when he comes back from Africa, he's going to be so surprised that Elvis, who was about the same age as he, had died. And it was reported he had died of a heart attack. So, um, they were both overweight, they were both unhealthy. Um, and I thought, he's going to think this could be me.
Yeah. But did you felt sad like the end of an era, or it was something that already had ended for you?
It had already ended for me because in Memphis, when I lived there, he had a very good reputation. There was never any reference to his going out at night and partying and having fun. It was never a bad thing. If you wanted to go out and ride a motorcycle, you're a grown man, you can do it. But the press that he got when he got older, for the things that he was doing, it was more of a negative press. And that to me was what was sad, that he was driven so hard and he clearly wanted to perform, but he needed rest, he needed something, and he just wasn't getting it. And, I couldn't watch that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a sad ending for a great life, and
Mm,
especially for someone who brings so good memories to a lot of people around the world. Um, I understand that you became a teacher, right?
I did. Hmm.
Is a teacher for kids or grow ups? What kind of?
Well, I taught junior high at first. I taught seventh grade for 11 years. Then I taught high school for 5 years. Then I switched back to sixth grade and retired as a sixth grade teacher. And those kids, none of them had never even heard of Elvis.
That's what I was going to ask you. They never heard about Elvis.
No, no.
That's amazing.
In fact, I took my daughter back to Memphis when she was 15. She's now 41. So I took her back to meet some relatives that were still there in town. So I took her to Graceland, and as we walked around, her impression of Graceland was, well, it's a nice yard and it's nice, but Mom, why are we doing this? And all she had ever seen was the last 4 years of
Hmm.
Elvis, and he did not appeal to her at all. But when we walked through the stable there at Graceland, behind the counter there, they had a television, a small black and white TV, playing um, films of Elvis. And she stood there and she looked, and it was probably when he was maybe 22, 23. And she said, Mom, who is that? And I said, that's Elvis. And she said, oh, now I get it.
Yeah,
And that was the thing. The older Elvis was unappealing to her, but when she saw what he was like and heard him sing and saw him move and listened to him laugh, she walked out, and we loaded up on Elvis um, souvenirs, and she kept them with her for years. So he still had it, even on a little 13-inch TV that we were 6 feet away from. So, she got an idea of what the real Elvis really was.
Yeah, that's great. I think that as we get older, we relate, we can relate more with the older elves. Um, I have now 44 years old, so I am 2 years older than when he died, and I can relate it more with him when with the same age. And I think with the kids is the same thing. When they know about Elvis, I think the young Elvis appeals more for them. And as we grow older, we understand about why he's singing about lost love and divorce and sadness and all these kind of things that he liked to sing later in his career. And I think that's what happens. Uh, do you still like to hear his songs? Do you have a favorite song of him? What is in your when you think about Elvis? What comes to your mind?
Love Me Tender is a song I remember because when it was on the radio and when the movie came out, there were reports, I don't know if they were true or not, that when Elvis died in that movie, that there were girls sitting in the balcony of movie theaters that threw themselves out of the balcony. And when I think of Elvis, that's what I think. He moved people to an emotional level that I would say most kids had never felt before. And, I'm really grateful to have been able to see that firsthand because most people just don't see. He was probably the most significant performer um, in modern times. He brought together country and blues. I saw someone ask, "Did Elvis ever go to Beale Street?" There was nothing at Beale Street when Elvis was young in Memphis. When I went back and saw that Beale Street was an attraction, it was nothing when I was there. So he might have gone to clubs to listen to some people, but if he did, he definitely did it under the cover of night, you know. So I just think he was probably the most significant performer in my lifetime for sure.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It was great to hear your stories, to hear about the times you lived in Memphis and saw him live. This is, for me, I never saw him live and I wish I could have, but we can have some sort of mental image of how it was when we hear people like you sharing those memories with us. So I want to once again to thank you very, very much for talking to me.
Oh, you're so welcome, and thank you for finding me. It brought up some wonderful memories that I'd just forgotten about.